Hello, everyone. By 1,400 million and also, yes, sitting just up from the wonderful team and the wonderful moderators and made yesterday's affair possible. I would want to say big welcome to you all in today from the respective regions across the entire world. Again, I want to just say karibuni nyote is a Kiswahili language that we use in and in English. Yes, welcome to you all. My name is Kevin Swanik. I am excited to be through this second day of an action platform featuring various episodes within the international dialogue. And besides everything that we'll be looking at today is how best can we create solutions that are youth-centered? How best can we probably just drive the conversation of tapping into the youth energy across the globe and creating solutions that are going to address the challenge. A bit of how we can interact and keep this as the day gets by and as the hour gets by. Allow me to probably share with you with the house if yes, you're looking forward to interacting with me during the next 1 hour and also for the better part of the day. Twitter handle is Kevin's Randiek. That's at Kevin's Randiek, Kevins Randiek, Randiek as one word. And Kevin's Randiek is my social media name across all particular platforms. You can check me up on LinkedIn, you can check me up on Instagram. And yes, let's probably get to engage and see what this is all going to be about today. But then again, I'm here to remind you, please, don't forget to take this particular conversation online. And one of the handles that we'll be actually using to share information across the entire day, across the 2 days remaining of this particular summit, World YMCA on Twitter, at World YMCA on Twitter. And yes, I'm delighted. I'm hereby actually so much delighted to be your plenary host this particular day. And I'm urging you, hey, take a picture, place that you are in, take a selfie. Probably take a selfie. Probably you are watching it with your colleagues. Or what else again can I urge you? If I told you just some trying to hide, that trying to follow up this particular conversation, take a selfie, take a photo. Do what? Go onto the World YMC handle page, tag us, pick up key probably highlights that probably stands out for you, and let's engage and let's keep this conversation. Let's keep this conversation as the day gets by. Besides all that, we are here to not only learn, to also enjoy ourselves, and to also just get it energized and get it kicking in everything that we desire to achieve as young people. And probably just for the sake of time, because I'm going to be more and more with you as the day gets by, we hope you get to discover a bit more about groundbreaking youth-led solutions, initiatives that are happening across the world and across different organizations. And yeah, without probably much further ado, and also for the sake of time, I will want to introduce the YMCA Youth-Led Solutions Future of Work Summit video, which is going to show up next on your screen. So see you next. Thank you. Thank you so much for that particular video for the YMCA Solutions. After, I'd like to introduce Rebecca King, who is an award-winning speaker doing lifestyle and personal development. She has been a freelance engineer for the past 12 years, and she helps other fellow workers navigate, survive, and share the experience they are working on. She is to be how to work alone.
So we do apologise. We've had a couple of technical issues with Kevin's this morning, as you can hear. Sometimes that's the way it goes with a live show. So I'm just going to step in while we try and sort out those issues. But next, it gives me great pleasure to introduce our first keynote speaker this Tuesday morning. Rebecca Sill is an award-winning food and drink, lifestyle and personal development writer. She's been a freelance entrepreneur for 12 years, and in an attempt to help other solo workers navigate, survive, and thrive in quite a strange world of working alone, she wrote the book Solo, How to Work Alone and Not Lose Your Mind. And having read it myself earlier this year, I highly recommend it to everybody. It's a thoroughly researched, evidence-based read, pulling on behavioral science, organizational psychology, and economics, with interviews with TED talkers. Please join me in warmly welcoming Rebecca Sill.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. It's very inspiring to be part of something so big and so brilliant. So thank you. I should also warn you that you're also joined by a small toddler who's just over there watching television. So anything could happen. Fingers crossed I will be allowed to complete what I want to say. So thank you for that introduction. I did indeed write this book, Solo. It was the product of a very difficult time in my working life, and one that I would really like to help other people to avoid. I had been working by myself, as many of us worldwide are now, for 6 years, when I looked up one day and realized that I was horribly lonely, unhappy, and had not succeeded in creating a life that I actually wanted. In fact, I hadn't thought about what kind of life I wanted in terms of work and my career at all. I had just put my head down and worked, which I think is a trap that many of us fall into. And subsequently to the book coming out, I've also created a podcast which deals with these issues, because obviously when the book came out in September 2020, we were in the thick of a very strange time in work with everything changing. And I realized that there were still a lot more conversations to be had on this topic. So I wrote it because I wanted to try and be a small part of a big change. I think that one of the things I think is most important about work and how we think about work is that we need to push it slightly away from the center of our lives. Work has primacy in our lives at the moment, and that's not actually a very healthy thing. It's not a very good place for it to be. And I know that sounds strange to be saying that at a conference about the future of work, and as somebody who writes a lot about work, but I think it's a critical thing that we think about as we work with people who are constructing their careers, or we are constructing our careers as we go through our lives. We need to think about how work has kind of overtaken our sense of self, particularly now, and our ideas about how we live and who we are in society. Now, hard work is not a bad thing. I work very hard. I have worked very hard. So it's not about denigrating that, but it is about saying what happens to our mental health when we allow work to sit right in the very, very center of our lives. And then with smartphones and the kind of societal, cultural way that we think about work, we allow work to kind of slowly spread and grow until it touches corners of our life that it really has no right to be in. And I think that, well, and the evidence shows that is where the beginnings of burnout happen, and where we find that life gets really difficult for people. So as part of a conversation about what the future of work looks like, I would like us very much to think, where does work sit in our lives? And I know that we hear all these messages all the time, so I'm not going to reel off loads of stats, but we have to accept the fact that particularly in the UK and the US, between 1 in 4 and 1 in 6 people are suffering from mental health difficulties in any given year. And this year has intensified that. This last 15-month period has intensified that still more. So we clearly have a problem that we need to be dealing with. And we need, because work is such a big part of our lives, we need to take stock of the fact that those mental health problems will, to a certain degree, involve work or lack of work. And we know also that entrepreneurship and solo working, which so many of us have been pushed into, kind of intensify these risks. The risk of loneliness and social isolation increases. Now, that sounds really negative. I actually don't think this is a negative moment, for all that we have had a horrific collective experience. I think that this is a hugely positive moment for work. I think that this is a moment where we can make a philosophical step change, and we can positively influence the way that work is for generations to come in the future. And I am so excited and delighted at the opportunity to be part of conversations like this one that allow things to begin to change. Because actually very little of what I write and think and talk about is the actual work that we do, despite being a specialist in work. It's actually about the way in which we build our lives around work, and how we need to shift that so that we're actually building our lives in a way that allows work to kind of slot into what we need as human beings, rather than simply folding and bending ourselves around the requirements of our work. So for me, that meant sitting down with a bit of paper, very retro, sitting down with a bit of paper and thinking about what I wanted my life to look like in 10 years' time. So I was about 30, I think, the first time I did this. I'm 39 now. And I wrote everything down on a massive bit of paper. And I started to think, in the micro and the macro, what kind of life did I want to have? How could I kind of retrofit the way that I worked to fit the life that I wanted to live? And that informs every decision that I take now, every piece of work that I say yes or no to, every decision I take in terms of, do I want work which is about earning more money to support my family? Is that what I need to be doing now? Do I need less? Do I need to be focusing on money less so that I can give more time to my children? All of those things. Do I need more? Do I need more time and space? Everything like that. It's all retrofitted from this future idea. And I never had that before. I didn't have any notion of what I wanted my life to look like. And so I want to Now, in the work that I do, and hopefully this is something that some of you can take through too, when I talk to people, and I do a lot of workshops on this, when I talk to people about how they want to construct their careers from now on, that's what I say you need to do. It's not about saying, I want to be partner by the time I'm 30. If you do, that's fine, that's great. Build that into your plan. But it's also about saying, where do you want to live? What kind of house do you want? What city do you want to be in? Do you want to be near the sea? What means a lot to you? Do you need to be able to reach the country really quickly? Do you want to be able to run? Do you need a gym really close by? Like all of those things. And then micro stuff like, do you want windows with a view? Are you going to be able to give yourself enough daylight? Everything. What do you want your body to look like? Do you want to be ambitious in 10 years time, or do you want to have done it and relax? Like everything. We can ask ourselves so many questions, and we can help other people ask those questions too. So I want to have that become the conversation that we have around careers, because I think one of the problems, certainly for me when I was growing up, and I think this is still true to a certain extent now, is that we don't tend to have these conversations with young people. We don't tend to empower them to think about their lives as a broad sort of spectrum of experiences. We tend, when we talk about careers, to think about a very kind of narrow career path and an idea of where they want to be solely from a kind of jobs and career point of view. And that just doesn't work. Like that's why we're seeing the epidemic of burnout globally. It just doesn't work to put work in the very center of our lives. And I think we've got a problem in the English language in particular with the way that we describe the jobs that we do. We say, I am a writer. We say, I am a bookkeeper. I am a plumber. And that's not true. We do our jobs. We are not our jobs. They are not the sole thing. They are not the sole component of our personality, but the way we use language allows us to kind of behave and think as though that's true. And we need desperately to move away from that idea. So how do we do this? How do we do this? Work is a work in progress. We have to accept that. We have to know that we're never going to be done with this. The conversation that we have to have is going to go throughout our entire careers. And to expect people to work in the exact same way for 30 or 40 years is really, really unrealistic. So we need to have conversations on an ongoing basis with ourselves. So perhaps that's something we do in January, something we do every month. Maybe that's something you build into your kind of internal conversation as frequently as you need it to happen. The critical thing is that we keep doing it and we keep making changes, and we keep facilitating changes in other people's careers as well. Because I don't work the same way now as I did 10 years ago. Now I've got small children on sofas watching Peppa Pig. And I certainly won't be working this way in 10 years time when they're teenagers and beyond. My life and my work changes all the time. We're so fluid. It's so dynamic. And we need to build that into all of the conversations that we have about work. The other thing that we need to do is we need to, on a micro level, to help sustain our mental health in this exactly difficult period. We need to make sure that we're giving our brains enough access to daylight. We need to, if you can, and you're working by yourself, move your desk so that you're close to a window, so that you can kind of help control your circadian rhythms, and you can help yourself to be more energetic and more dynamic in the daytime, and then you'll expose yourself to dusk as the evening falls. So that's a really positive thing you can do if you're struggling with your work right now, today, and your mental health. And you can also use that tool to help other people too. You also need to make sure that you're taking regular breaks, that within your working day and after and between your working days. In the UK, it's mandatory to allow people an 11-hour break between shifts. But when we work by ourselves, particularly if we're solo entrepreneurs or if we're remote workers, which so many of us are at the moment, we tend to deny ourselves that. We tend to look at our emails really late at night, and then first thing in the morning, I don't sleep for 11 hours at night. So we don't allow ourselves the breaks that most modern economies would insist that actual employed workers have. We also need to think about the food that we give ourselves, and we need to make sure that we're moving during our working days. So those are kind of micro things that we can do, and the book is absolutely stuffed with more ideas and things that you can do if you're really struggling right now with your work. But I'm out of time, so thank you so much for having me. I'm sorry if that was like an incredibly fast talk, but thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Rebecca, for that. And to the audience watching, you could actually probably just check it and find out what Rebecca's book solo is on. All right. Probably just getting in onto the next segment and panel that's coming in, centered on the care economy. I really want to go quick and straight into bringing the panel of that's going to this whole issue about. And the person going to moderate this particular segment coming next is Lloyd Wamai, who is the management executive at the Africa Alliance YMCA. A bit of a quick overview and introduction of who Lloyd is. Lloyd is a design thinking practitioner, a technique that actually is so integral for young people to enable them employ when designing solutions after this particular summit. And with several years worth of experience in then became an official of the Kenyan government programs executive at the Africa Alliance of YMCA to introduce our panel and guests. Hey, Lord, the platform is yours.
Hello, everyone. I hope you can hear me. Thank you very much, Kevin. That's an awesome introduction. I was wondering who that is you're speaking about. So, but very happy to be here today. I have very little time to do this, so I would just like to go straight into it. I have with me three awesome personalities, three awesome, lovely practitioners, experts, three ladies, and I would not do them justice by a long introduction. I'll just mention them by name, and then I'll ask them each to introduce themselves. That's Dr. Ayat, Abu Agla, Sachi, Dalal, and Valeria Esquivel. So welcome, ladies. Welcome to the conversation. Really happy to have you on board. If I might mention the care economy, to be honest, I learned about the care economy very recently. I've been engaging with the care economy without actually knowing it. So I think the most important thing for us as young people is to even understand what the care economy is, even as we understand a little bit about you. So I would maybe ask Dr. Abu, if we could start with you, just give Dr. Ayat, sorry, if we could just start a small introduction of yourself and what you do and what's the care economy for you. We would love to hear from you. So take it over, Dr. Ayat. Oh, I think we've lost Dr. Ayat. Okay. Oh dear. All right. No problem. Sachi, maybe you could go next. Just a small introduction of yourself, who you are, and what's the care economy like for you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here. So I'm Sachi, and I am currently working as the Chief Strategy Officer at a tech nonprofit startup in India called Khushi Baby. And what we are doing is creating technology to facilitate rural public health. And we particularly work mainly in Rajasthan, but are working to scale up our technology solutions across India. And our direct relation with the care economy is that we create these solutions, particularly we're creating mobile health solutions for India's largest community health workforce. And what we have is these digital tools that financially and clinically empower community health workers who work in these villages and serve as healthcare navigators for 70% of India, which is rural. So that's just a quick introduction. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you very much. I will come back to you in a few minutes Very interesting. Valeria.
Yes. Shall I introduce myself and also define what I think it is the care economy? So I'm Valerie.
Exactly.
I
Yes,
am Valerie Kivel. I work at the International Labour Organization, and I'm one of the authors of the ILO report on care jobs and care work. So for us, the care economy is several things, but basically it is the sum of all the unpaid care work that is done in the households, plus all the work and workers that contribute to the health sector, to the education sector, and to domestic work. So for us, that is all the care economy. And as you see, there is a paid section and an unpaid section. And there are common issues, and there are things that are different and should be treated different. The common issues is that both care in the unpaid and the paid is highly feminized. It is the women who provide 3/4 of all unpaid care work, and it is also in the care economy, in the paid section, in the sectors, that they are between 60 and 70% of the workers, yeah, and depending on the countries and depending on also the sector. So the care economy is huge, and it is a strong employer. And if anyone doubted what the care economy, or whether the care economy was important before COVID, now no one doubts it.
It's very
I think
true.
we'll stop there. We can follow up afterwards.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Valeria. I think we have Dr. Ayat back. Welcome back. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Lloyd, and thank you, colleagues, and good morning, good day, and good afternoon to everyone.
Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. It happens all the time. It happens all the time, I'm sure. Oh, there she is again. No problem, no problem. Maybe as she comes back, maybe I can go back to you, Sachi. You did mention Kuchi babies, I think you mentioned. Maybe you could just tell us a little bit more about the work that you do in India, about your experience within the care economy, and just a little bit more with a bit of a reflection on the current and what the future looks like.
So there's a lot to talk about in terms of like the work we do, but I wanted to highlight two elements of the care economy which has stood out to us. So one is working with the community health workers who are all female, and the nurses who are also all female. So we work with these two large workforces that provide 70% of care to rural India. And then thirdly, since we focus on reproductive and child health, we also interact with all of the mothers who are living in these communities. And here you kind of see this element of unpaid work that is done by the mothers at home and what the effects are on their lives. And then you see the sort of ecosystem in which the female community health workers are living in. And what I wanted to highlight is that on the community health worker side, what we've seen is that the environment in which they work is very, very difficult. They are often quite underpaid. They have huge amounts of work to do and very little time, and it creates a lot of pressure on them, which often leads to them sometimes taking shortcuts. And there's a loss of accountability at the last mile because you have. In fact, I feel like the root cause is just because they are just so overburdened and they're also not skilled enough. So I think the resources into not just the compensation that they receive, but also in terms of the skill set which is imparted onto them when they are onboarded is really important. And that wholly, if the environment in which they are working in is improved, I think that the quality of care that the rural beneficiaries receive will improve a lot as well. And then on on the side of the mothers that we interact with, who are our patients, they 99% of them are working in the home and doing like unpaid domestic work or unpaid agricultural. They work in the agricultural fields, but mostly they're just in the household. And what we've seen is that this is not only a barrier for them to enter into the paid workforce, but we also see that this is a barrier for them to receive healthcare, because often, like, just going to the primary health center and taking their child to a vaccination camp is often a huge burden, because they have so much work in the house and they just don't have any help to assist them. So I'll stop there to give Dr. Ayat chance.
Thank you very much, Sachi. Dr. Ayat, go ahead. Welcome.
Sorry for that earlier. We've been teleworking for the past now 2 years, yet we still face internet problems and connection issues. So it's a pleasure being with you all here. And I'm connecting from the World Health Organization, the HQ here in Geneva, where I work at the Health Workforce Department as part of the Working for Health program that works in creating a case that investing in health workforce is indeed investing in health, and also with the Global Health Workforce Network, which among many hubs, we have the Youth Hub that constitutes 500 plus members and 40 plus organizations and unions and associations in medical and health professionals. So it's a pleasure being with you all here. And Sachi, just continuing from what you were saying, indeed, the youth, and with the audience here, you know that they represent 1/5 of the global population, yet they make up 1/3 of the total unemployed global workforce, and 145 million work in poverty, where 267 million number of the young people who are not in employment, in education, nor in training. And with the pandemic that has hit the globe, unfortunately, we see the need to invest in health and care workers, especially in the generation, the future and the present, which are the audience among us now, the youth, where the WHO estimates that a shortage of 18 million is needed if we were to achieve the universal health coverage. And just speaking to the point, Sachi, that you just mentioned on how women form 70% of the health and care sector, yet half of it is unpaid care, where estimates show that it ranges up to $3 trillion US. So yes, indeed, these are the figures. Giving a landscape and setting the scene for the discussion. That the figures are real and they're all estimates and projections. And indeed, a lot has to be done, hopefully, within our discussion today, within the Youth Summit, within the organization and institutions and the audience that are here, in order to make the argument that investing in health and care, among other sectors, investing in youth, is the future. So over to you, Lloyd.
Thank you, Dr. Ayat. That's amazing. It's shocking, but at the same time revealing and encouraging that there's so much opportunity. Valeria, you've been mentioned a little bit as the ILO and some of the documents I've read does talk a little bit about and a lot about what the ILO does. Maybe you would have something else to add?
Yeah, thank you, Lloyd. No, I wanted to follow up on Dr. Ayat, and indeed, the ILO and the WHO work hand in hand on supporting investments in the care workforce. As I said before, it is health, but it's also education, and it's also domestic work, the broad picture of the paid employment. But I wanted to give you these figures. In 2019, that is before the pandemic, 15% of all young people between 15 and 24 were employed in, of all young female people were employed in the care economy, as opposed to 4%. So these sectors are really strong employers of young women. But they have to have the qualifications for entering these sectors, as Dr. Ayat has said, because both in education and health, these sectors require higher skills and higher qualifications. The other thing to say is that these figures must have increased last year because all other sectors contracted and these sectors didn't. So we don't have the latest figures yet, but we will have them. but we expect this proportion to have increased. So on top of the long-term trends in which we know that there are unmet demands today of care and there will be greater demands unmet in the future by 2030, in 10 years, in less than 10 years, we also know that the COVID has emphasized the need for investments in these sectors, and therefore the need to or the possibility of creating decent jobs for young people. Thank you.
That's awesome, Valeria. I recently came into contact with palliative care nurses at a hospice, and I became very concerned at how much work there is to do, but how little skill there is to actually do the work, and how little investment there is by government in this space. Maybe very briefly, I don't know what the WHO, maybe what's your experience? I don't know, the ILO. Perhaps this is a conversation to continue into the breakout. That's a very important conversation. But I would probably want to hear just very briefly, what do you think about, how much investment has been made? I know Valeria has talked about trends. Just as we conclude very briefly, Sachi, Dr. Ayat, Valeria, just very briefly, in terms of investments, do you think has been made or could be made?
Well, to me, the long-term care and the early childhood education are the sectors that require more investment as compared to, let's say, education, primary, secondary education, and health. Yet, we know that we are not yet in track to meet the SDGs by 2030. So more investment is required. But it has to be investment that creates decent jobs. These sectors are very labor intensive, and the temptation to create not so good jobs to meet the needs, the way Sashi was describing, is huge. So the important thing is to move to investments in the sectors, and as WHO says, in the care workforce and in the education workforce, but also do it in a decent way, which means paying decent wages and giving social protection. I'll stop there.
Okay. Thank you very much. Sachi, just very briefly before we go.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think investing in not just the compensation of, let's say, community health workers that we work with, but also ensuring that they have the most advanced tools to do their job in the most efficient way and in the most informed way. You can't expect them to do the best work that they can when they're in the dark, and they have to use tools that take so long to sort of work through. But since we have less time, I will stop and allow Dr. Ayat to continue.
Yes, Dr.
Yes, just a final sentence. Protect, invest together. That's the slogan of the campaign of the year of the health and care worker that WHO launched. So it sums what we've been discussing. Let's protect our health workers with decent work conditions, environment, decent pay, salaries, education, training, personal protective equipment, and so forth. Let's invest, because when it comes to health, there's always a scarcity in resources. And when it comes to health workforce, they're always left behind. And let's work together, not health sector, but all different stakeholders, sectors throughout the interdisciplinary approach and multi-stakeholders that we have in order to reach that together. Thank you. Over to you, Lloyd.
Thank you very much. I just would like to invite the audience to the breakout session. Bring your pen and paper, bring your most critical mind, bring your innovation space. Let's see you there. Over to you, Mike. Thank you.
Hello and welcome back. I thought that we were going to Kevin's, so I wasn't quite prepared. So we are nearing the end of our plenary for today, and there'll be another panel discussion coming later this afternoon on the green economy starting at 5 p.m. Geneva time. Thank you so much to Lloyd, Valeria, Dr. Abu-Gala, and to Saatchi for your thoughts and reflections. You'll actually be able to catch them in a breakout conversation, a breakout panel that will be starting up when we finish here, where you'll have the opportunity to ask them questions. And that's going to be over here, I think. If you click the breakout sessions tab, I reckon I've got that about right. And you'll have the opportunity to ask them questions. So, like I said, we are coming to the end, but a couple of important announcements to make before I go. The first is those breakout sessions. That's where we're all going next. We have 7 different breakout sessions for you to choose from, including preparing young people for the future of work and Asia Pacific perspectives on the economic development of jobs. We have the importance of young people pursuing jobs in the public sector, and the development alternative with YCare International and Restless Development, shifting power to young people using digital technology. Now, if breakout sessions aren't your thing, make sure you engage in the networking area, where you'll be matched speed networking style one-on-one with other delegates attending the summit. Then, after we have 2 rounds of breakout sessions over the next 2 hours, you can still carry on. Over in the resource library, we have hours of on-demand, exclusively curated workshops for you to watch in your own time. Lastly, don't forget to be back here, 5 p.m. Central European Summertime, Geneva, for some must-watch content, including that green economy panel discussion. So keep posting on social media, use the hashtag YMCA Youth-Led Solutions. Also keep really active in the chat so people know that you're with us, and grab some refreshments. Stay hydrated, stretch your legs, and we'll see you in the breakout sessions in just a moment.